The champagne flute felt heavy in my hand, heavier than it should have been. I stared at the bubbles rising to the surface, golden and perfect, just like everything else in my restaurant that night. The Crystal Room, my crown jewel on the top floor of my flagship hotel, sparkled with the kind of elegance I'd spent 40 years building. The city lights of Chicago stretched out behind us through floor-to-ceiling windows, and I should have been on top of the world. My daughter Shanice sat across from me, her designer dress catching the candlelight, her smile wide and bright. "To you, Mama," she said, raising her glass. "To everything you've built, to the empire you created from nothing, and to finally, being able to rest and enjoy it all." I smiled back at her, my heart full. 67 years old, and I was finally ready to slow down, ready to let someone else run the day-to-day operations, ready to trust my only child with the legacy I'd built with my bare hands. "Thank you, baby," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "This means everything to me." As Shanice excused herself to take a phone call, I lifted my glass. But before it could touch my lips, our waiter, a young man named Terrence who'd worked for me for 3 years, leaned down close to my ear. His voice was barely a whisper, urgent and trembling. "Mrs. Washington, please. Don't drink your juice. Don't drink anything she ordered for you. I saw—" His voice cracked. "I saw what she did." My blood turned to ice. Before we continue, please drop a comment if you've ever experienced something like this. We'd love to hear your story and subscribe to the channel to help us grow. Let me take you back to where this all started, because you need to understand how deep this betrayal cut. I was born Evelyn Mae Johnson in 1958, right here on the south side of Chicago. My mama cleaned houses, and my daddy worked the night shift at the steel mill until it killed him at 43. I learned early that nobody was going to hand me anything. If I wanted something, I had to take it. At 18, I started working as a maid at the Palmer House Hotel. I watched how they did things, how they treated guests, how they managed their operations. I took notes in a little spiral notebook I kept in my apron pocket. At night, I went to community college. During the day, I cleaned toilets and made beds and smiled at people who looked right through me like I was invisible. But I wasn't invisible. I was paying attention. By 25, I'd saved enough to buy a rundown boarding house on the west side. Everybody said I was crazy. "Evie, that neighborhood is rough," my mama said. "You're throwing your money away." But I saw something they didn't. I saw potential. I saw working families who needed clean, safe places to live. I saw business travelers who couldn't afford the fancy downtown hotels but still wanted dignity and comfort. I fixed that building up myself. Painted every wall, replaced every fixture. I named it Washington House. Took my married name, the one I kept even after my husband Raymond left me when Shanice was just 2 years old. He said I worked too much, cared too much about business, said I was never home. He wasn't wrong, but I had a daughter to raise and a future to build. Washington House filled up within 3 months. The rent money let me buy another building, then another. By the time Shanice was 10, I owned 6 properties. By the time she was 20, I had 15, including my first real hotel. A beautiful brick building in Bronzeville that I turned into a boutique hotel celebrating Black history and culture. I gave Shanice everything. The best private schools, dance lessons, piano lessons, summer camps in Martha's Vineyard where she could meet the right kind of people. I wanted her to have opportunities I never dreamed of. She went to Howard University, got her business degree. I was so proud I could barely see straight. When she came back to Chicago, I brought her into the business, started teaching her everything I knew. But somewhere along the way, things changed. It started small. She'd question my decisions. Not in a good way, not in a let me learn way, but in a you're too old to understand way. She married Darius Monroe, a smooth-talking investment banker who wore suits that cost more than my first boarding house. They had 2 beautiful boys, my grandbabies, Amari and Zion, 8 and 6 years old, with my eyes and their grandfather's smile. Darius started putting ideas in Shanice's head. I heard him once, when they didn't know I was listening. Your mother is sitting on a gold mine, Shanice. 20 properties across Chicago, including 3 full-service hotels. That's worth at least $50 million. Maybe more. And she's just sitting on it. Not maximizing the return, not leveraging the assets. She's from a different generation. She doesn't understand modern business. I understood business just fine. I understood that fast money often became no money, that debt was dangerous, that the slow and steady approach I'd used for 40 years had gotten me further than most people ever dreamed. But Shanice started listening to him. 6 months ago, she came to me with a proposal. She wanted to take the company public, bring in investors. Expand rapidly, she said. Scale the business. This is 2025, Mama. We could be the next Marriott. I said no. I'd built this empire brick by brick with my own sweat and tears. I wasn't about to let some Wall Street investors dictate how I ran my business. That's when things got cold between us. She stopped coming to Sunday dinner, stopped bringing the boys around. When I called, she was always busy, always had somewhere else to be. It broke my heart, but I told myself she'd come around. Young people always think they know better. Eventually, she'd understand why I made the choices I made. Then, 2 weeks ago, she called me. Her voice was warm again, like honey. Mama, I'm sorry. I've been acting like a fool. Darius and I have been going through some things, and I took it out on you. Can we have dinner? Just you and me? At the Crystal Room? My treat? I should have known better. But when your child reaches out after months of silence, you don't ask questions. You just say yes. So there I was, that Friday night, dressed in my best purple suit, the one I'd worn when the mayor gave me a key to the city for my work creating jobs in underserved neighborhoods. My hair was freshly done at Gloria's beauty shop, where I'd been going every Saturday for 30 years. I felt good, felt hopeful. The Crystal Room looked perfect. My staff had outdone themselves. Fresh roses on every table, the jazz trio playing Coltrane in the corner. The menu featuring all my favorites. Mama's shrimp and grits recipe, the one I'd put on the menu as a tribute to her. Shanice arrived 20 minutes late, but she looked beautiful. She hugged me tight. Mama, I've missed you so much. I've missed you too, baby. We talked about the boys, about her work. The conversation felt easy, natural, like old times. She ordered for both of us, said she wanted to surprise me with a special menu she'd worked out with the chef. You've taught me so much, Mama, she said, reaching across the table to hold my hand. I want you to know that. Everything I know about business, about perseverance, about strength, I learned it from watching you. My eyes got misty. This was my daughter, my baby girl. The one I'd sacrificed everything for. The appetizers came, the main course. Everything was delicious. Then the waiter, Terrence, brought out champagne. 2 glasses already poured and bubbling. To new beginnings, Shanice said, raising her glass. That's when she got the phone call. She looked at her screen and frowned. Mama, I'm so sorry. It's the babysitter. I have to take this. She stepped away from the table, and that's when Terrence leaned down and whispered those words that changed everything. Don't drink your juice. I saw what she did. My hands started shaking. I looked at the champagne glass in front of me, then at Shanice's across the table. They looked identical, but Terrence's eyes were wide with fear. What are you saying? I whispered back. I was in the kitchen when she came in. She said she wanted to add a special ingredient to your drink, said it was a surprise for your celebration. But Mrs. Washington, his voice dropped even lower. I saw her pull out a small bottle from her purse. She poured something into your glass. Not hers, just yours. and the way she looked around to make sure nobody was watching, it didn't feel right. My stomach dropped. Where's my glass now? Right in front of you, the one on your right side. I looked down. Terrence was already moving away, professional and distant again, but I saw the fear in his eyes, the concern. Shanice came back to the table, all smiles. False alarm. The babysitter just wanted to know if the boys could have ice cream before bed. She picked up her glass. Now, where were we? Oh, yes, to new beginnings. She drank from her glass, watched me expectantly. I picked up mine, my hand steady even though my heart was racing. I brought it to my lips, but I didn't drink. I pretended to take a sip, then set it back down. This is wonderful, baby, I said, my voice calm. Tell me more about these new beginnings you mentioned. Her eyes lit up. Well, actually, I wanted to talk to you about something important. About your retirement. About the business. Oh? I kept my voice neutral. I think it's time, Mama. You've worked so hard for so long. You deserve to rest, to travel, to enjoy life. And I'm ready to take over. I've actually been talking to some investors, just preliminary conversations, about restructuring the company, modernizing our approach. After I told you no? Her smile didn't waver. I know you said no before, but I really think if you understood the opportunity, you'd feel differently. In fact, she reached into her purse and pulled out a folder. I had my lawyer draw up some papers, just to make things official, to transfer management authority to me while you're still here to guide me through the transition. My blood ran cold. While I'm still here? You know what I mean, Mama. While you're still active. Before you get too tired. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. At the designer dress that cost more than I'd spent on clothes in a year. At the diamond earrings Darius must have bought her. At the cold calculation in her eyes that I'd been too blind to see before. And what happens to me in this new arrangement? I asked quietly. You'd be taken care of course. We'd set you up in a nice retirement community, somewhere comfortable. You could finally relax. A retirement community. She wanted to put me away somewhere, and she'd tried to poison me first. The pieces clicked into place. If I'd drunk that champagne, if Terrence hadn't warned me, what would have happened? Would I have gotten sick? Died? And with these papers already drawn up with her position to take control? How long have you been planning this? I asked. Something flickered in her eyes. Planning what? Mama, I'm just trying to help. How long? She sat back, and for a moment her mask slipped. I saw something ugly underneath, something greedy and cold. Does it matter? She said softly. You're old, Mama. You're slowing down. The business is too much for you. Everyone can see it. It's time to pass the torch before you run everything into the ground. I just posted my most profitable quarter in company history. Because of systems I helped put in place, because of my ideas, my work. She leaned forward. You had your time. You built something impressive. But it's my turn now. And honestly, you should be grateful. I'm offering you a comfortable retirement instead of... She stopped herself. But I heard what she didn't say. Instead of what? Instead of whatever was in that glass? I stood up, my legs steadier than they'd been in years. Funny how clarity can make you strong. I need to use the restroom. Mama? I'll be right back. I walked across the restaurant, my head high, but instead of going to the restroom, I went straight to my office. My hands were shaking as I called my lawyer, Bernard Hutchins. We'd gone to community college together 40 years ago. He was the only person I trusted completely. Bernard, I need you to come to the crystal room right now and bring somebody from the police. I think my daughter just tried to poison me. Saying those words out loud made them real, made the betrayal sharp and cutting in my chest. My daughter, my only child. The one I'd sacrificed everything for. She'd tried to kill me for my money. But as I stood there in my office, surrounded by photos of every property I'd ever bought, every award I'd ever won, every milestone I'd ever achieved, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't going to be a victim. I'd survived poverty, racism, a failed marriage, and 40 years in a brutal business. I'd built an empire from nothing. And I sure as hell wasn't going to let my own daughter take it away. I walked back to the table. Shanice looked annoyed. "You were gone a while." "I'm an old woman. These things take time." I sat down and looked at her steadily. "Tell me something, baby. If I drink this champagne, if I sign those papers, what happens to your brother's inheritance? What happens to Amari and Zion?" She blinked. "What?" "My grandchildren, your sons. What happens to their inheritance?" "They'll be taken care of." "By you?" "Of course." I nodded slowly. "The same way you're taking care of me?" Her face went blank. "I don't know what you mean." "I think you do." We stared at each other across the table, two women who shared blood and history, and nothing else. The jazz trio kept playing. Other diners laughed and talked. The city lights sparkled behind us. And in that moment, I knew my life would never be the same. The elevator dinged. Bernard walked in, and he wasn't alone. He had 2 police officers with him. And right behind them, my heart nearly stopped. It was my ex-husband, Raymond. I hadn't seen him in 15 years. And holding his hands were Amari and Zion, my grandbabies, their eyes wide and scared. Shanice turned pale. "What is this?" "Mrs. Monroe," one of the officers said, "we need you to come with us, and we'll need to take that glass into evidence." As they led my daughter away, as she screamed that I was making a mistake, that I'd regret this, that I'd never see my grandchildren again, Raymond walked over to me with the boys. "Evelyn," he said quietly, "we need to talk. There's something you don't know, something about Shanice, and something about these boys." I looked down at Amari and Zion. They were crying silently, holding on to their grandfather. "Grandma," Amari whispered, "I'm scared." I knelt down, my old knees protesting, and pulled them both into my arms. "It's going to be okay, babies. Grandma's here. Grandma's got you." But even as I said it, I wondered if it was true, because Raymond's face told me that whatever he was about to say would shatter what was left of my world. And I was right. We sat in my office, me, Raymond, Bernard, and the 2 boys curled up on my leather couch, finally asleep after crying themselves out. The police had taken the champagne glass, taken Shanice down to the station, and now Raymond was about to tell me something that would change everything. "I should have told you years ago," Raymond started, his voice heavy with regret. He looked older than I remembered, gray at the temples, lines around his eyes. But those eyes, they still held the warmth I'd fallen in love with 45 years ago. "But Shanice made me promise. She said if I ever told you, she'd make sure I never saw the boys again." "Told me what?" My voice came out sharper than I intended. Raymond took a deep breath. "Amari and Zion aren't Shanice's biological children. They're mine. But their mother—" He paused, looking at the boys sleeping peacefully. "Their mother was my daughter from another relationship. Your stepdaughter. Her name was Keisha." The room started spinning. "What?" "After I left you, I reconnected with a woman I dated before we got married. Turns out she'd been pregnant when we broke up. She never told me. Our daughter Keisha grew up without knowing me. But when she was 25, she found me. We started building a relationship." His voice cracked. "She was beautiful, Evelyn. Smart and kind and everything good. She became a nurse, worked at Cook County Hospital." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because by then, You and Shanice had built this wall between me and your life. I was the deadbeat dad who walked out. I didn't think you'd care." "I would have cared," I whispered. "I would have wanted to meet her." "I know that now." Raymond wiped his eyes. "Keisha got married, had these boys. But 3 years ago, she got sick. Cancer. It was aggressive. She fought hard, but—" He couldn't finish. Bernard leaned forward. "What does this have to do with Shanice?" "Keisha's husband couldn't handle it. He left when she got sick, just abandoned her and the boys. I was taking care of them, but I was working 2 jobs and living in a 1-bedroom apartment. I couldn't give them what they needed." Raymond looked at me. "Shanice showed up at the hospital one day. I don't know how she found out about Keisha, but she did. She was so kind, so helpful. Said she wanted to be there for her half-sister." My chest tightened. I knew where this was going. Before Keisha died, Shanice convinced her to sign custody papers. Said she and Darius would give the boys a good home, good schools, everything. She promised Keisha she'd let me be part of their lives, let them know their grandfather. His voice turned bitter. But as soon as the ink was dry, everything changed. She told me if I ever contacted you, if I ever told you the truth, she'd move away with the boys and I'd never see them again. She had legal custody. There was nothing I could do. "But why?" I asked. "Why would she do that?" "For appearances," Bernard said quietly. He'd been making notes on his legal pad. 2 children from a good family, perfect for her image as a successful businesswoman. And more importantly, he looked at me meaningfully, for your will. Understanding hit me like a physical blow. She knew I'd leave everything to my grandchildren. "Your will states that upon your death, 30% of the estate goes to Shanice, and 70% is held in trust for your grandchildren until they turn 25, Bernard confirmed. "But as their legal guardian, Shanice would control that trust. Control 70% of a $50 million empire." I felt sick. She wasn't just trying to kill me for the business. She was trying to kill me for the boys' inheritance, too. Raymond nodded. "Last week, she told me she didn't need me anymore. Said the boys were confused by having me around, that I was disrupting their lives. She said if I tried to see them again, she'd file a restraining order." His hands clenched into fists. That's when I knew something was wrong. I started digging, following her. I saw her meeting with some man in a parking garage, heard her talking about accelerating the timeline, about removing obstacles. When she told you about dinner tonight, I knew. I called Bernard. "And I called the police," Bernard added. "We got here as fast as we could." A knock on the door interrupted us. One of the officers from earlier stood there, looking grim. "Mrs. Washington? We need to talk to you about what we found in that champagne glass." My heart stopped. What was it? "High concentration of oleander extract. It's a plant toxin. Causes symptoms that look like a heart attack. Very deadly." He met my eyes. "Ma'am, if you'd drunk that whole glass, you'd likely be dead within a few hours. And given your age, most people would have written it off as natural causes." The room went quiet. My daughter had tried to kill me. Not just scheme against me, not just betray me. She'd actually tried to murder me. "There's more," the officer continued. "We searched her home with a warrant, found documentation of significant gambling debts. Seems her husband Darius has a serious problem. They're in the hole for close to $2 million to some very dangerous people." So that was it. Desperation, greed, a need for money fast. "What happens now?" I asked. "She's being charged with attempted murder. The evidence is solid. The waiter's testimony, the toxin in the glass, her own lawyer's paperwork showing motive. She's looking at 25 to life." After the officer left, I sat in silence. My daughter was going to prison. My grandchildren, no, my step-grandchildren, had already lost their mother, and now they'd lose the woman they thought was their mother, too. "What about the boys?" I asked Raymond. What happens to them? I want to fight for custody, he said immediately. But Evelyn, I can't give them what they need. Not on my own. I'm 68 years old, working security at a hospital. I live in a tiny apartment. We looked at each other across the decades. Two people who'd loved each other once, who'd made mistakes, who'd let pride and hurt feelings keep us apart for too long. Then we do it together, I said quietly. What? Those boys need stability. They need family. They need to know they're loved. I stood up, walked over to where they slept. Amari had his thumb in his mouth. Zion was curled into a ball. They're innocent in all this. And their mother, my stepdaughter, she deserved better than what she got. Better than being used by Shanice. Better than dying without me knowing she existed. My voice broke on that last part. I'd had a stepdaughter, a young woman who'd shared Raymond's blood, who'd been part of my family tree, and I'd never known her, never got to meet her, never got to tell her that she mattered. I want to raise them, I said firmly. With you. We'll figure it out. I have the resources. You have the love. Between us, we can give them what they need. Raymond's eyes filled with tears. You do that? After everything? I didn't build an empire to die alone and bitter. I built it to create something that lasts, to take care of family. I looked at him. We may not be married anymore, Raymond, but we're still family. And these boys are our family. That's what matters. The next 6 months were a whirlwind. The trial was brutal. Shanice's lawyer tried to paint me as a controlling mother who'd driven her daughter to desperation. Tried to suggest the poison was a misunderstanding, that she'd only wanted to make me sick enough to sign the papers, not kill me. But Terrence testified. The toxicology reports were clear. And when the prosecutor brought up the gambling debts, the fake custody arrangement, the way Shanice had manipulated a dying woman, the jury's faces told the whole story. They convicted her on all counts, 28 years in prison with possibility of parole after 20. I didn't go to the sentencing. I couldn't watch my daughter, the baby I'd carried, nursed, raised, be led away in chains. Instead, I sat in my living room with Raymond and the boys, helping them with homework. Because that's what family does. They show up. They do the work. They love through the pain. Raymond and I didn't get remarried. We were too old and too stubborn for that. But we became partners again. Co-parents, friends. He moved into the guest house on my property, a beautiful cottage I'd bought years ago but never used. Every morning he walked the boys to the private school we'd enrolled them in. Every evening we had dinner together. On Sundays we went to church at Fellowship Baptist, where Pastor Williams led the congregation in prayers for healing and restoration. The boys called me Grandma Evie. They called Raymond Pop Pop. And slowly, painfully, they started to heal. But I knew I needed to do more. Keisha's death, my stepdaughter's death, haunted me. A young black nurse, working herself to exhaustion at a public hospital, getting sick with no support system, abandoned by her husband. How many other women were out there like her? How many families were struggling, falling through the cracks? I called a meeting with my executive team. I want to start a foundation, I announced. The Keisha Washington Memorial Foundation. We're going to focus on supporting single parents with serious illnesses, healthcare costs, childcare, housing assistance, whatever they need to keep their families together while they fight. My CFO, Patricia, looked concerned. Mrs. Washington, that's admirable, but the costs... I'm selling 2 of my properties, the ones on the north side. That'll give us $10 million to start, and I'm redirecting the profits from one hotel, the Bronzeville, to fund the foundation in perpetuity. That's a significant portion of your estate. Good. I met her eyes. Money sitting in accounts doesn't help anybody. My daughter tried to kill me for this empire. Well, I'm going to use it to save lives instead. We launched the foundation 6 months later. The community response was overwhelming. People nominated families in need. We provided grants, connected people with resources, offered support groups. We hired social workers and nurses. We partnered with Cook County Hospital, where Keisha had worked, to identify patients who needed help. In the first year, we helped 200 families, kept kids with their parents, kept parents alive long enough to see their children graduate, get married, have babies of their own. I'd spent 40 years building hotels. But this was the legacy that mattered. One afternoon, I was at the foundation office when a young woman came in. She was maybe 30, thin and tired-looking, with 2 little girls holding her hands. "I'm sorry to just show up," she said nervously, "but I heard about the foundation. I'm a teacher. I have breast cancer. I'm trying to keep working, but the treatments... I can't afford childcare and the medical bills. My ex-husband won't help. I'm about to lose my apartment." I stood up and walked around my desk, took her hands in mine. "What's your name?" "Jasmine. Jasmine Crawford." "Jasmine, you came to the right place. We're going to help you. We're going to make sure you can focus on getting well, and your babies are going to be taken care of." I knelt down to the little girl's level. "What are your names?" "I'm Nia," the older one said shyly. "I'm 7. This is my sister Zara. She's 5. "Well, Nia and Zara, your mama is very brave, and we're going to help her be strong. Okay?" Nia looked up at her mother with such pure love that my heart cracked open. Is Mama going to be okay? We're going to do everything we can to make sure she is. As we worked out Jasmine's support plan, covering her rent for 6 months, arranging childcare, connecting her with a social worker, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Real purpose. That night, at dinner, I told Raymond and the boys about Jasmine and her daughters. "That's really cool, Grandma Evie," Amari said. He was 11 now, growing tall and strong. "You're like a superhero." "I'm not a superhero, baby. I'm just somebody who learned that the hard way, that family, real family, isn't about blood. It's about showing up." "Like you showed up for us," Zion added. He was 9, quieter than his brother, but with a gentle wisdom beyond his years. "Like we all show up for each other." Raymond smiled at me across the table. "Keisha would be proud of all of this." "I wish I could have known her," I said softly. "I missed so much." "Then let's make sure her sons know who she was." Raymond got up and returned with a photo album. "I've been putting this together, pictures of Keisha, stories from her friends, her co-workers. I thought we could share it with the boys, help them remember their real mama." We spent the evening looking through photos of a young woman I'd never met, my stepdaughter. She had Raymond's smile and a warmth that shone through every picture. Keisha in her nursing scrubs, making funny faces. Keisha holding newborn Amari. Keisha at Zion's first birthday party, her head wrapped in a bright scarf, already sick but still smiling. "She was beautiful," I whispered. "She was family," Raymond said, "and she would have loved you." I love her too, even though I never met her, because she gave us these boys, and because she deserved so much better than what she got. 3 years after that night at the Crystal Room, I stood in front of the city council. They were honoring the Keisha Washington Memorial Foundation for our work in the community. We'd helped over 800 families now, saved lives, kept families together. Mayor Johnson shook my hand. "Mrs. Washington, you've shown us what it means to turn tragedy into triumph, to take pain and transform it into purpose." I looked out at the audience. Raymond sat in the front row with Amari and Zion, now 14 and 12, handsome in their suits. Patricia was there with my executive team. Terrence, the waiter who'd saved my life, was there with his new wife, Pastor Williams and half of Fellowship Baptist. Jasmine Crawford, now cancer-free, with Nia and Zara. And in the back, trying to be invisible, I saw a prison counselor I recognized. Next to her, in civilian clothes for this supervised visit, was Shanice. Our eyes met across the room. My daughter looked older, harder. Prison had carved away the softness, revealed the bones underneath. But there was something else in her face now. Something that might have been remorse. Or maybe just resignation. After the ceremony, she approached me. The counselor stayed close. "Mama," Shanice said quietly, "I know I have no right to talk to you, no right to ask for anything. But I just wanted to say," her voice cracked, "I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. For what I tried to do. For using those boys. For betraying everything you taught me." I looked at my daughter, the baby I'd loved so fiercely, the woman who'd tried to kill me. "Are you sorry because you got caught?" I asked. "Or are you sorry because you understand what you did was wrong?" She was quiet for a long moment. "Both, I think. At first it was just about getting caught, but being in there, having time to think, I see it now. I see what I became, what I threw away." Tears rolled down her face. "I threw away my real family for money. And I lost everything." "You did? The boys, how are they?" "They're good. They're strong. They're loved." Do they ask about me?" I could have lied, could have been cruel, but I thought about Keisha, dying without knowing she had a stepmother who would have cared. I thought about all the families we'd helped, all the second chances we'd given. "Sometimes," I said honestly, "we tell them the truth, that you made terrible choices, that actions have consequences, but also that people are more than their worst moments." "Do you believe that?" she asked. "That I'm more than my worst moment?" I took a breath. "I believe you can be. But that's on you, not me. You have 22 years left in prison. What you do with that time, how you choose to grow, what kind of person you become, that's your choice. That's your second chance." "Will you—" she hesitated. "Will you ever forgive me?" "I don't know," I said truthfully. "But I'm working on it. Not for you. For me. Because carrying hate and anger is too heavy. I've got better things to do with my life." The counselor touched Shanice's arm. "Time to go." As I watched them leave, Raymond came up beside me. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, surprised to find it was true. "Yeah, I am." That night, I sat on my porch with Raymond, watching the boys play basketball in the driveway. The Chicago summer air was thick and warm. Fireflies danced in the garden. "You know what's funny?" I said. "I spent 40 years building an empire, sacrificing everything for success, for money, for legacy, and I almost died for it. But you didn't die." "No. And in losing what I thought was my family, I found my real family. I found you again. I found these boys. I found purpose." I gestured toward the lights of the city. Somewhere out there, Jasmine is tucking her daughters into bed in a stable home. Somewhere, a single dad is getting treatment for his cancer without worrying about losing his kids. Somewhere, families are staying together because we showed up. "That's Keisha's legacy," Raymond said softly. "And yours." "And ours," I corrected. "We did this together." "Together," he agreed. Amari made a basket and whooped with joy. Zion high-fived him, laughing. They were good kids, smart, kind, resilient. They'd carry Keisha's memory forward. They'd remember that their grandmother, both grandmothers, loved them fiercely. I thought about that night at the Crystal Room, the champagne glass, the waiter's whispered warning. The moment everything changed. If Shanice had succeeded, none of this would exist. The foundation, the families we'd helped, the lives we'd saved. My grandchildren would have grown up thinking their mother's greed and betrayal was normal. That success meant stepping on others. That family was just another transaction. But she didn't succeed, and from the ashes of her betrayal, something beautiful had grown. "You know what I learned?" I said to Raymond. "True wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in the lives you touch, the people you help, the love you give and receive." "Took you 67 years to figure that out?" he teased. "Better late than never." He took my hand. His fingers were rough and calloused, but warm, familiar. "Evelyn, thank you. For everything. For giving me another chance. For loving these boys. For being the woman Keisha would have wanted in their lives. Thank you for trusting me, for telling me the truth, for being the man I needed when I needed him. We make a pretty good team." "Yeah," I smiled. "We do." As the sun set over Chicago, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Real peace. I'd lost a daughter. But I'd gained 2 grandsons, a partner, a purpose, and a legacy that would outlive me. I'd built hotels that would stand for decades. But I'd built something more important, too. I'd built a family. Not the one I'd planned, not the one I'd expected, but the one I needed. The one that showed me what really mattered. And that was worth more than all the hotels in the world. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.